Hey everyone, welcome back to Bagel TCG. Today we're doing a pretty big tier list update for the Hunted season. I haven't made one since Viscerai hit Living Legends, and I wanted to give it a few weeks to have some practice with my team and really understand the meta shifts a bit more. We have Pro Tour London in just a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I think, from today, and I wanted to get this out in advance a bit to help everyone kind of understand the meta. I don't think it'll really change much from now to then unless Zen Living Legends. And I'll talk about that a bit now because there is a chance Zen hits Living Legend before London. That could cause some meta shifts, but he has a surprisingly low meta share, so I don't think it'll be big. So I think this will be fairly consistent, at least through now until London, for how the meta is going to look. So, as you have probably seen in your locals or online, uh, Aurora is kind of the star of the show right now, right? And S tier is kind of the meta. It's the strongest decks, it's the decks that you're going to see the most of. So it's kind of a mix of both. I'm combining play rate and power for each tier, right? So uh, S tier is it's going to see a decent amount of play and it's one of the strongest decks. Aurora is fitting the bill the best right now at the calling that happened last weekend, I think. She had like 60 people playing her, and the next most had 20. So she's definitely the most played deck. The Armory deck bumped her up quite a bit, not just in play rate, but also maybe in power, but definitely in play rate. There was a big bump after the Armory deck. Viscerai left, and so she's kind of the new Rune Blade. So she is kind of where the meta is revolving around. If your deck has no Aurora plan, I don't think it's possible to top 8 without like the luckiest pairings ever, because you're probably going to play like 3, maybe 4 Auroras in a calling at least in an event. So she's where the meta is revolving around right now, and I think a lot is responding. A lot of the other meta is responding to Aurora, not just because of her power, like I said, but I think even more than that, her play rate. She's just a very large chunk of the meta right now. She's not easy to play, but she's also not that difficult either. So I think you can save some of your mental energy, which does help for longer events that are 10, 15 rounds. And some really complicated decks, you'll get pretty fatigued halfway through, but Aurora, I think you can push through all the way. Now, what else is in S tier? Um, I don't remember exactly what my tier list looked like last time, but I think the only other two S tier heroes are the MST heroes, Enigma and Zen. Um, I think Enigma might be a surprise to some people because you would think she doesn't have a great Aurora matchup as an illusionist. Illusionists typically are weak to aggro, but I actually think Aurora's or Enigma's Aurora matchup is not horrible. I think it's maybe like 45% for Enigma, but you'll win it about half the time, which I think is good enough considering Enigma almost auto wins against anything that's not aggro. Like if it's aggro, she has maybe like a 40 to 50% win rate. Like it's not abysmal, but she'll win outside of Syndra. Syndra is really bad, but for any other aggro deck, she can win a little less than half the time, which is good enough. And if you can like skill gap your opponent, you can you can win a matchup like that. So I don't think it's that bad. And if you pair, into an assassin or a guardian or something, then you just feel or Florian or anything that's not just aggro, you feel pretty comfortable because you have your big board that they can't clear, right? And Zen, I think, has a lot going for him with Zen states right now. They're really powerful. You get one from your chess piece at least, and then you play all 3 wax. I don't know which one's the majestic. You play 3 of the majestic blue, wax off, I think, and then you play 6 of wax on. I might be mixing up the names, but those let you make Zen states pretty consistently. If you really want more, you can even play Sound the Alarm in the sideboard. I just think you can make like 2 and sometimes 3 Zen states every game, and those are really, really powerful. And you can do that kind of just casually while you're also like a pretty strong aggro deck. You're not as aggro as something like Aurora, like you don't do quite as much damage, but because of your blue base, you can play Command and Conquer, Weakest Link, stuff like that, and you can play these D-Reacts. So it's kind of a mid-rangey deck that sometimes pops off and does big aggro turns with Chase to Tail. But both these decks are really strong. I think if you didn't want to play Aurora, I would highly recommend playing one of these. Um, you can play like basically aggro, kind of more control, or mid range, basically. So you kind of get a little bit of flavor of each. Um, and that's where I would say are the strongest decks. Oh, and Aurora, like I said, has the biggest win rate, or not win rate, play rate. And then Enigma and Zen, I think, have not the second highest. I think they both had about 20 or so. So they're both in the top five for play rate as well. Okay. A tier. A tier is strong or counter. Basically, it's something that is just strong by its own, but maybe not quite as strong as the top decks, or maybe it's specifically there to counter one of the top decks, like for example, counter Aurora, right? For the first deck in that example, I think Prism kind of fits both bills. She is decently strong on her own. She has some flaws, but is fairly strong. But mostly, Prism with the Heralds can counter aggro pretty well, especially Aurora, who plays like a lot of decks play zero poppers. Maybe some of them are playing like two down and dirty now or something, or three Blanche, which is going to make the matchup a little better. But in general, yeah, I think it's quite Prism favored. You just slam them with Heralds and they can't really stop them. And when your Heralds are getting through and connecting, they're so above rate of almost anything else in Flesh and Blood. Um, that is just really good. I don't think her Enigma and Zen matchup are quite as good. They might even be like actively bad. But since Aurora is the most played deck and they're not going to be able to tech for you that well, I think it's in a pretty good spot. And she's just, like I said, decently strong in her own, which you kind of need to be an A tier. New, filling out the MST hero slot. She's pretty good. I don't think she beats Aurora as much as you would like. Her big power was in beating the other MST heroes with Siren's Call, which is still really good. So I think she can still beat Zen. That's like Zen's worst matchup, probably, or one of his worst matchups. And then the Enigma matchup is not good, but it's not like unwinnable. I mean, it's not great, but you can win it sometimes. And then I think the Aurora matchup is maybe like slightly unfavored, but I think you can get it about 50-50. So she's just strong. Like New just does strong things. Assassin's a pretty strong class right now. I think all of the assassins are not bad. You could play also like there's so many assassins. Oh, I guess not all of them because you've got Huntsman hanging out down here, I think. But I think all the assassins are solidly playable. You get to play Codex of Frailty. You get to play like Command and Conquer and Leave No Witness, Bonds of Agony, Persuasive Prognosis with Justinic. Like you can all play those cards, right? So it's really like what is the best hero ability to go with that and the best package, like Chaos cards or Mysterio cards. But I think New just has the advantage. Uh, Her hero ability gives her some different matchup spread that's a bit better into certain decks, like decks that play a lot more blue attacks, for example. She can mill and go to fatigue a little bit better, and she gets access to mystic cards, which I think is enough, like just to have a nice talent. Of course, there's the chaos talent, but there's I think two chaos cards in the game, so really it's not a real talent where mystic actually is. So I think that gives her the edge there. But the other assassins I think are all good. You can kind of play any of the four assassins and do fine. B tier is just good. They're just like good decks, nothing special. Um, let's see what else is in A tier. I don't think the top of the meta is super wide open right now. Like I think these are kind of the five best decks. That might be it. Florian, of course, won the calling, so like there's I want to almost put him in here, but I think he's like more realistically maybe the high B tier. I'm not really organizing them within tiers, to be fair. I'm just adding them, so don't worry about who's in what order in the tier. But he's, you know, maybe just a good B tier hero. I would want to put him in A just because I think uh, him winning the event in Japan was really cool, but it's not really consistent enough results. I think his Enigma matchup is still pretty bad. And I'm not even sold his Zen matchup is good either. I think he probably beats Aurora, so that you would think, oh, that makes him similar to Prism. I don't think that's enough. Prism also can like beat a lot of other stuff too, where I don't know how good his matchup is into other things. I think he probably is a pretty good assassin matchup, which maybe puts him here. Yeah, I think he might end up here, but I'm gonna put him in top of B to not get too excited for his results. Okay, moving on. I think this is where I'm just gonna leave S and A tier unless I realize something I missed. B tier, I will say, is massive. Like, there's 35 or something legal heroes at least, so the tier list is already gonna look really big. And I think like 70% of the heroes are just in B tier, meaning like, yeah, they're good. Like they can do something strong. If they do the strong thing right, they can win. Like the meta is close enough in power that realistically any B tier hero could beat Aurora, right? Like it's not like such a massive power differential like Starvo or Lexi or anything like that, where I think the S tier decks would never ever lose to a B tier deck. Flesh and Blood is not a game like that. It's not like so one sided. Any of like for example these four B tier decks, I think all actually might be doing pretty decent into Aurora, or maybe like 40% win rate into Aurora. But like it's not like every time you pair into Aurora you lose. So I know tier lists are fun, but take it with a grain of salt. Like, I don't think a D tier hero could beat an S tier, but I think these three tiers at the top are close enough in power level. It's really like D being like the dumpster tier and being like bad meh tier or something. Like, this is just not great. Uh, yeah, I think bad is a bit strong. Already have dumpster. I'll just put meh. Because these are like heroes that I think don't have as much going for them, and this is like actively just horrible heroes at the bottom. I think Syndra is one that people thought would go into A. Um, but no, she turned out to be more of an early meta star. If you looked at the conversion rate from the calling in Japan, there was 20 Syndras and 0 of them made day 2. Not a single Syndra out of 0. It was by far maybe the worst conversion rate I've ever seen for a hero in the history of Flesh and Blood for that number of decks. 0 out of 20 is just really incredibly horrible. It's just actively really bad, right? So I still think she's got power, but I think people are overestimating her power, especially because of her early meta results. And I think Aurora just does aggro way, way better. Um, while we're on the ninja line, I think I'll just finish up the ninjas because I feel like it. Ira, I think, is not bad either. She is kind of similar to Syndra, where she's like not she's good. She can do good things with flick knives and with mask of momentum, but I don't think she disrupts quite as good as the assassins, and she doesn't aggro quite as well as the rune blades. So she's just kind of okay. Yeah, maybe she's more like meh. I should be a bit stricter. You know what? I'm gonna be a little stricter because I'm talking about them like they're meh, and then I'm putting them in good. Um, but they're really like meh. Like I think let me spread it out more like this. I think this is more accurate so that it's not. Otherwise, I'm gonna have 25 heroes in good if I'm being generous like that. But like I said, finishing out the ninjas, I'm gonna put Katsu in dumpster. I know he can win sometimes, but not enough. And I'll put Fi in dumpster as well. Just play Syndra. Like if you really want to play a Draconic Ninja, he's not. Maybe he's not actually dumpster, and I'm just being too harsh with it. But I don't know why you would play him. There's two other really really good ninjas. So unless you just really like Fi, I don't think it's where you want to be. Okay, let's go over to Rangers. Azalea, I think, is good. She does do really powerful things. Her weapon's really strong. Arrows are really strong. Pumps are strong. She, I think, is in a maybe more of a mess spot in this meta, but I'll keep her in good for now. I think she's in a mess spot. Just position wise, I'll keep her in good because her power level is there. Like Azalea has really powerful lines presenting like 14 to 16 damage a lot of turns with like 4 on hits that are all relevant. She does really just fundamentally powerful things. The reason I say I think the meta has kind of shifted to make her in a worse spot is they printed shelter from the storm, which means a lot of decks, especially defensive decks, like for example, Enigma and New I know are both doing this, are running 9 good D reacts now, right? You're running 3 Fate, 3 Sync, 3 Shelter, which is just a lot of solid 0 for 4 D reacts for Azalea to get through. People are going to run those anyways because they play so well into Aurora, who plays like just 0 for 4s over and over, right? So they trade card for card with Aurora, which is pretty good. Obviously, much better than a 3 block. So you're already playing those, and a lot of the top decks have decent bit of armor, especially the aggro decks. Like Aurora has a full fridge. She can play 2 block on her head, 3 on the chest, 3 on the arms, and 1 on the feet. So she can play 9 armor block, which is pretty high for an aggro deck. And I think Zen plays 7 armor block, so still not bad. So I think she's struggling with the amount of D reacts in the meta and with the armor. I don't know if the armor thing is ever going to change. They're just going to keep printing better armor, but the D react thing might change. I mean, those D reacts are good, but the meta can shift to make D reacts less relevant, and that would help her a lot. Other rangers, Riptide. He's not. Maybe he's dumpster. I don't think he's actually dumpster. I think he's fine. He has this cool trap fatigue blockout plan that actually might, in a world, possibly be favored into Aurora. I've never seen it played out, to be honest, but he looks funny, so I'll give him not dumpster for that. Guardians are unfortunately not in a great spot. Uh, I think it's something like this. Funnily enough, Jarl had what looked like a good conversion rate because I think 5 people brought him and 3 made day 2 or something like that. So he had like a 60% conversion rate. But realistically, I've played, Guardian's my favorite class. Um, and I'll put Victor in meh as well. Guardian's my favorite class. I've played a lot of Jarl recently. I top 8'd an RTN on it like 2 weeks ago. But I think if the Aurora's really good, uh, they still win. Like even when you try to go like Rampart Fatigue with Counter Blessings, like a really good Aurora can combo you out pretty well. And you lose to Zen and Enigma because Enigma is Enigma and just builds a big board, and Zen can play 3 Cosmic Awakening and deal 60 damage with only using 3 cards, so you can't fatigue that either. So I just don't think he's in a great spot. You will win against Aurora a decent portion of the time, which is why he's not dumpster, because sometimes you do just fatigue them with Rampart and Counter Blessings, but it's not consistent enough for me to be happy with playing Guardian right now. Mechanologist, I think Dash.io is actually good. Mech isn't really seen in a lot of play right now. This is with like a bit of a caveat. Dash.io is good if you are really good. I think she's one of the harder decks to play. You have so many lines every turn, and I see a lot of people play her and just play not to perfection, which is you don't have to like it's hard to play to perfection, right? But you don't do that, and suddenly she's like dumpster, right? Like a few bad decisions with Dash.io, and you're in the dumpster tier. So I'll put good with the caveat like only for people who are like kind of Dash.io specialists. We have one on our team on Team Nietzsche, Yop, and I almost like makes me want to put it in S tier sometimes. He is like beating all of our Auroras, and it's just really impressive. So I think maybe I'm a bit biased because I know a really good Dash.io, but I'll put her in good for that. Other Dash gets dumpster. She doesn't have just if you want to play a boost aggro deck, just play Dash.io. It does it better. And then the other mechs are also dumpster. Mechs not in a great spot, but I'll have a video about the spoilers for High Seas coming out soon, and the new mech seems pretty interesting, so keep an eye out for that. But for now, mechs generally in a bad spot. Dash.io just has a really, really, really strong hero ability and had an armory deck that gave her a little bit of extra support. Warriors are also in a pretty horrible spot. I was saying, oh, it's gonna be a massive B tier, and then I just decided to be really harsh with the meta, so not gonna look like that. I think they're all dumpster except maybe Dorinthia could be considered meh. Dawnblade can do things. That's too generous. No, I'll put her there, but I will let my cope put Fang into meh tier. I almost want to put him into good tier because I really love my Fang deck. But I'll just put him in meh tier. I will have a deck tech for Fang coming out in the next few days. I had told people I was going to have a deck tech coming out like a month ago, but I have changed the deck and practiced it so much since the release of the Hunted that I just am never happy with where it is exactly. And so I make changes and then push the deck tech, but I'm just going to finally make one. Um, so that is where he'll be for now in meh tier. Uh, what's next? Let's do brutes. The brutes are pretty bad, except KO is probably meh. He just has a decent enough power level. I think he's still fine. He's like almost good even, just because he does brute things and you get to play decent bit of disruption with your sixes. He's not bad. Like he's about as strong as he was on release basically, but he was the top of the meta on release, and obviously the meta has grown in power level quite a lot since heavy hitters with Mysteria heroes and Rosetta heroes being up here a lot. But he's still a decent deck. I think the wizards are uh, all bad. Verdance has seen a lot of play, but I've never been impressed with it. And then Vincent I will put in good. I think I thought she was really good for a while, like S tier at some point. I've like slowly come down on that. She has more consistency issues than I realized. I'd like to say she doesn't because I think she's really fun and she's one of the decks I want to play right now. But she just isn't as consistent as I'd like. Aurora's can beat her. I thought her Aurora matchup was really good, and it's just not as good as I thought. So yeah, uh, that's the meta though. Viscerize in Living Legend Void down here. I started saying it was gonna have a massive B tier, but I managed to throw most of those heroes that were B tier in my head down into the dumpster. I think this is mostly where I see the meta. I think some of the meta heroes maybe deserve to be. I think I was pretty strict, so some of the meta heroes could be in B tier, and some of the dumpster tier could be in meh. I just wanted to like try to focus the meta as much as possible, especially on what I thought you should play. If you're going to London, if you're trying to practice for it, I think these top 5 heroes are where most of your focus should be, and then give maybe a little focus to some of the stuff down here in like good and meh tier, like play 1 or 2 games into each and like know your game plan, I suppose, into everything. But I think you need to put most of your focus on these heroes. I did mention I would say something about what if Zen hits Living Legend. If Zen hits Living Legend, I think Enigma gets better because it's one of Enigma's bad matchups. I also think it's a bad matchup for Aurora a little bit, so maybe Aurora technically gets better. But for some reason, Zen doesn't see as much play rate. I think he might be the best deck in terms of power level right now. Like I would say he's probably the strongest deck in terms of power level. Um, but he just doesn't see a lot of play, especially compared to Aurora. So I don't think he'll have a huge impact on the meta. I think New maybe gets a little worse, and like Marionette becomes the better assassin because New is really good at preying on the MST heroes with Siren's Call and hero ability and stuff like that. But I might make a tier list if I think it changes a lot, but I really don't see the meta changing super fundamentally uh, when Zen leaves. It wasn't like when Viserai left; he was like the top dog of the meta. It's basically like if Aurora left. If Aurora left, the meta would change a lot because she's such a large play rate and such a large impact. But Zen's kind of just like I don't even know if he will leave. If he does, he's not the biggest deck. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with. I love to hear everyone's thoughts. This is, of course, subjective. I'm basing it off of results I've seen and people I've talked to and played with, but it's still biased by the experience I see in games. I can't play every game of Flesh and Blood that exists. So mine is probably different than your exact tier list. In my head, I wish Jarl and Fang were S tier, right? Because those are my 2 favorite heroes right now. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell because I'm going to have a lot of videos coming out in the next week. And I'll see you next time.